So after 10 years of photography and filmmaking, I have boiled down to these two lenses as the penultimate combo that I believe anyone can use to do 90% of their creative work. We're gonna go over why I chose these two lenses, offer some affordable alternatives, as well as what to keep in mind in order to maximize their versatility. Let's get into it. So starting off with the zoom lens, the 16-35 f2.8, probably the most versatile option that's gonna give people the most mileage in my opinion. There are a ton of mid-range zoom lenses which are excellent and we're not ignoring them. But in my opinion, the more wider zoom lenses are a little bit harder to come by, especially one that gives you an ultra wide view of 16mm and close into a standard view of 35mm. I travel often and I often find myself in really grand architecture, so having 16mm and something like this really comes in clutch. It's great for vlogging, it's great for gimbal work, and it's really great for landscape, street, and environmental portrait as well. And there's also a well-known advantage that most Sony hybrid full-frame cameras have, and that's the ability to shoot in APS-C Super 35 mode, effectively turning this lens into a 24-50mm. So in essence, you can go from 16 to 50mm with this one lens. Crazy versatility. And don't worry, we're going to be going over the advantages and disadvantages when shooting in APS-C Super 35 mode. Now most people are going to be looking for a constant aperture of f2.8 on zoom lenses, as that tends to be the lowest f-stop for zoom lenses, and f2.8 is going to allow in a little bit more light into the sensor, especially when you're shooting in low light conditions. Now of course the Sony G Master versions are going to be quite expensive, but in my opinion, well worth the investment if you're looking for maximum versatility. Optically as well, I found it to have the least amount of vignetting and excellent corner-to-corner sharpness. And I'd say go straight for the G Master 2 just because it's lighter and it's better in terms of autofocus, especially if you're using a camera that can shoot 20, 30, 120 frames per second. You want to stick with Sony because they have the autofocus tracking technology to keep up with it. And otherwise, we have a ton of great alternatives at a much lower price. Namely the Sigma 16-28mm, the Tamron 17-28mm, but just keep in mind in APS-C Super 35 mode, both lenses are going to cap out at just 42mm. However, Tamron just released a full-frame 17-50mm f4 zoom lens that is lightweight and is going to give you even more reach, which is insane. Super 35 mode that is, and we're getting 25.5 to 75mm full-frame field-of-view equivalent. It is an f4 lens, so it does have a slight disadvantage in low light, but the flexibility and range more than makes up for it, in my opinion. Next up, prime lens, and my choice is going to be the 85mm. It's an incredible complement to the 16-35 because it's going to give you a significant jump in getting that closer field of view. And there are a ton of 85mm in the market. The Sigma 85mm f1.4 have been incredibly loved by a large portion of the community. But the one that I have here and enjoy using just because of the price and performance ratio is the Sony 85mm f1.8. Look at that, it's so tiny, it has a nice big aperture of f1.8. Pop this baby into Super 35 mode and we're getting 127.5mm full frame equivalent field of view. Now, it's no secret, I love the 85mm a lot. I have made several videos about the 85mm, but the short and sweet summary of this lens is you're gonna experience sharpness that you've never seen before. And it also has a certain look where some would say their photos and videos look more cinematic. And while that's debatable, there's no denying this kind of lens just makes any close-up on any subject look flattering. It has this alluring look where it pulls the background closer to your subject with its compression, and it softens the out of focus area, giving us that pleasing bokeh that we all love. So together, these two lenses along with your camera are pretty much what you're gonna need to accomplish 90% of any coverage. So you only have to bounce between these two right here, and it's gonna free up a lot of space in your backpack to bring things like a gimbal, a tripod, or even some lights. Up next, I'll show you some examples of how I use them together to maximize their versatility, talk about potential disadvantages, and offer some advice on building your own lens kit. But first, a quick word from our lovely sponsor, KH Camera. KH Camera is a reputable site to shop pre-owned camera gear from. Everything that comes their way gets thoroughly inspected and all backed by their 180-day warranty should something go wrong, or 21 days to return if you end up not liking it. I mean, hey, it could be possible that you picked up these two lenses and you're like, it's not really my thing. As long as you return it within that return window, you can pick up something else that might be more fitting for your workflow. And they also offer additional product protection in partnership with Extend. To learn more, check out my link down below to get 5% off your next purchase or 5% more when you sell. Thank you so much for listening. Now back to the video. So let's talk about how I use these lenses. An ultra wide angle lens like a 16-35 has always been my establishing shot lens. I use it to showcase the environment that I'm in for both photo and video. And for video in particular, I love using it on a gimbal. I think shots like these look sick and epic, but if all your shots are gonna be wide, then it's not gonna provide enough variety. You need detail shots to supplement in, and the 85mm is the best candidate in my opinion. I especially love this combo for talking head interviews. The 16-35 offers a nice master wide shot, and the 85 offers a nice second angle close-up shot. And you also might have heard wedding photographers love to use a 35mm prime and an 85mm prime, and both of these lenses here cover that. Especially a zoom like the 16-35, you have the flexibility of going wider if you're tight on space. And 85mm, you don't need me to tell you, for the nice portraits. So we were talking about APS-C Super 35 mode where we're cropping into our pictures and footage and getting that extra bit of distance, but are there any disadvantages in doing that? Well, for video, no. Shoot full frame, shoot APS-C mode, your videos are gonna look great. In fact, certain full frame cameras forces you into APS-C Super 35 mode when you're shooting in 4K 60p, which is why I recommend the 16-35 because it at least puts you in the 24 to 50mm range instead of making your framing too tight. On the other hand, if we're talking about disadvantage for photos, then it depends. If you're using a 24mm full frame camera, then in Super 35 mode, you're only going to be getting 10 megapixels. So in my opinion, higher resolution cameras would benefit the most. For example, the A7R5 with its 61 megapixels in full frame mode, we're getting a generous 26 megapixels in APS-C mode. And by the way, ZVE1, A7S3, FX3 users, sorry, the Super 35 mode trick would not apply to you when shooting in 4K. Instead, look up clear image zoom. So hopefully throughout the video, I've answered the question why I've chosen the 16-35mm as my first choice in recommendation. But if you still feel like a mid-range zoom lens might be a better fit for you, I'd say go for it. For example, I also enjoy using a 3-lens combo sometimes, the 24-70 f2.8 along with 2 additional lenses. I'm using the 14G Master as well as the 135mm to go along with it. Both of these prime lenses have a significant disconnect from the 24-70 that will allow me to achieve very different looks. So you just want to make sure that the kit that you're building up doesn't have too much of an overlap. Unless you're in a production environment like on a set, bring any more than 2 to 3 lenses would just hinder you. You'll likely not use the extras, or maybe use them for like one shot for like 1 to 2 minutes, and then you'll be like, well, that wasn't worth bringing. So general rule of thumb is as long as you have a wide lens and a tele lens, you're gonna have some flexibility, and I'd say you'll be pretty solid. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.